Welcome back, everyone. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I grew up in the FLDS community. It is a polygamous group run by Warren Jeffs, and I moved out when I was 18 years old.
I was raised LDS. Sam and I have been married for 9 years and have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. And we want to quickly thank our donors on DonorBox and the members of our YouTube channel. We really do feel and appreciate your love and support.
Yes, today we are back with another episode of this journey of Sam in Short Creek with Mike King from Profiling Evil.
Yes.
And today we're going to talk about the Pray and Obey house. I'm excited to see because this has had huge changes just since the last time we were out there. And I won't reveal yet why. No, I'm just kidding. Leave some suspense. But I'm excited to see it. This, I think, will be the first footage I've seen of the changes. So
yeah, there's a lot. I mean, this is kind of a shorter video that Mike King and I did just in front of this home here, but there will be a lot of commentary that comes along with this. So we will just start and then pause along the way to add context to it. Hey, welcome back, everyone. Sam here with Growing Up in Polygamy.
Hey, and I'm Mike from Profiling Evil.
And unfortunately, as you can tell, I don't have my beautiful wife, Melissa, with me today. She wished she could be here, but she's with our kiddos and having a great time with them. But I'm here with Mike and look forward to talking a little bit about what is directly behind us.
Yeah, I mean, this here was originally the place that we would come to talk with Rulon Jeffs and then later Warren Jeffs. Yep. And of course, we can see that signature chimney stack has changed recently.
It has.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about this? Because you actually played a pretty important role in all of this, building the wall and working on this complex.
If you find any crooked blocks behind us on this wall, that was my doing, just to leave my mark. No, I'm kidding, but probably. But yes, directly behind us, you see the home that Warren Jeffs lived in. And the chimney there says, or used to say, pray and obey. Very iconic chimney. And we have footage of that in the past that we've come out here and done. But they've recently taken that down. And it's a very positive thing to see this change that's happening in the community now. Most everyone living here does not follow Warren Jeffs anymore. And the community really is coming together and making some really good changes, in my opinion.
okay, yes, when I saw the chimney behind, I almost didn't think it was the same house for a second.
Right.
Because it is like so iconic to that. And that now is the Dream Center.
Yes.
If you haven't seen our videos on the Dream Center, we can leave a link up above. But the last time we were there, they said it was going to be taken down that next week. And I was like, this is going to be so like strange because when you go through the town, when you see that, it's like, you know that was Warren Jeffs' house.
Yes, it was very easy to pick it out, but now that it's gone, it looks just like, well, it is in this big compound with the big walls around it. Most walls throughout the community at this point have been taken down because people are wanting to change that feel and make it seem more welcoming and open to the outside world now that Warren Jeffs is no longer in charge of all of the property here. But so you do see these walls and it automatically stands out, but the chimney being changed is a big one. The pray and obey, when I lived there, pray and obey was a very positive thing to see, right? In my mind, it was like, wow, I'm a part of this great religion and great church that, you know, is encouraging us to pray and obey and be obedient to God's teachings and all of that. But when talking with a lot of people, not everyone saw it that way. And especially now that I'm on the outside, I can see why some people would look at that as a power move for Warren Jeffs to say pray and obey, and referring in a lot of cases to himself. Be obedient to the prophet, be obedient to the one man who supposedly talks for God. And that obedience as he is expecting is to him, not necessarily pray and obey to God.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you hear pray and obey and you're not from that background, you think, well, it is good to pray to God and to be obedient to God's laws. But also, I feel like within not just the FLDS, but a lot of times within Mormonism, we're taught that you're supposed to pray of whether or not what the prophet says is true. And then you're supposed to be obedient. But if you get an answer that doesn't line up with what the prophet says, you're in trouble.
Right.
Like you can't. It's hard to reconcile. So if the prophet says one thing and you pray for a confirmation and maybe you get an answer that what the prophet says isn't right, you are in a tough spot because if you believe he speaks for God, you're only going to get, I think confirmation bias is the best way to word it.
Yeah, it's tough because you are basically going to pray until you get the answer you think you should get. Because you're kind of taught that if you pray, I'm referring to FLDS here specifically, but I'm sure other people have experienced this too. When you're taught to pray if something is true, but you're not given that option of who the prophet is at the time or who the leader is at the time, if you get the answer that goes against that, then you're going to think that it is an answer from Satan. Because that's another thing, is people believe that Satan can try to answer prayers sometimes. And if Satan's answering the prayers, then when do you know who's answering the prayers, and how can you determine whether or not it is coming from God? And that is why so many people that already kind of have this belief in someone being the prophet or speaking for God, they will pray until they get the answer they want, and then they will go with that one.
Well, and within Mormonism, we're taught that a prophet can't lead you astray, or else they will cease to be the prophet.
Right.
And so I feel like even growing up in the mainstream LDS church, it's like, yes, I can pray for my own revelation of what I believe, but ultimately what God's telling the prophet is going to supersede my own revelation. And I get that that's a personal thing. Everybody can feel differently about that. So I'm not saying how every LDS person should feel. But if you believe wholeheartedly that the prophet speaks for God and you have a testimony that that person is the prophet, mentally already you're going to put a lot of stake into what that prophet says, in that that's the right decision and that they are receiving revelation of what you should be doing with your life, what the church should be doing. And so anyway, I know it's a long spiel on pray and obey doesn't just mean pray to God, obey like the 10 commandments. It means so much more within Mormonism, and even more when it comes to War and Justice and the FLDS.
Much more when it comes to the FLDS, yes.
The thing that I think is impressive, you and Melissa have been out here quite a bit working on what that change really means for this complex that used to be Warren Jeff's home for him and all of his wives. What's different about it today?
It's very different. There is no Warren Jeffs or his wives here.
That's a good
if there are any of his wives here, it's because they are getting help from the Short Creek Dream Center. This has become an organization to help people that are trying to get out of a very difficult situation and have nowhere else to go. And the Short Creek Dream Center here, which Brielle Decker, who was the 65th wife of Warren Jeffs, has a very big role in helping getting this up and going, and is still very involved with helping people that are leaving the FLDS church and need some help. In some cases, hiding from people within the FLDS church, and in other cases, just don't know where to go, don't know how to get started with life now that they have been under Warren's control for so many years.
The Dream Center, we've done tours of it. Our last tour, we can leave up in the, we'll leave a link to that tour if you want to see what the inside looks like. I mean, it's 40 rooms. This house is huge.
It is very big.
And the fact that it's used for so much good now after the harm that Warren just did to the community is super cool. But yeah, we'll leave that up above. Also, we did tour it with Peter Santinello. I will leave the link to that video below if you want to go check out on his channel, the tour of Short Creek and the Dream Center with him.
And more tours to come, right? I mean, this is an active thing that we were doing, and very excited to kind of showcase this. And I know that if not now, there will be visual of above. And when that does come out, if you haven't already seen that in other areas, it is impressive to see how massive this house actually is. It is hard to get a good idea unless you're actually physically there or seeing it from above compared to other homes throughout the community, how massive this complex and this home that Warren Jeff stayed in actually is.
That's pretty amazing. Number one, to think that one of his wives, who was so deeply embedded in all of this, would help drive that effort and help others. And there have been some really laudable people who have stepped up to help the victims of this kind of coercive control, not only to get out, but to stay out, because that's not just the easy part, it's probably getting out, isn't it?
In some cases, yes. I mean, there have been stories, and Brielle Decker was one of those stories, where she was physically locked up and could not escape. They were physically holding her hostage. But that's, I would say, more rare. In my case, and in a lot of people's cases, it's the decision to leave and to actually physically move out is very challenging, yes, because you know you're leaving your family behind. So emotionally and mentally, it's very, very challenging. But yes, once you get out, what do you do? That all you knew was in the church, working for the church, doing what Warren Jeffs told you to do. So once you're out, it's hard to find your feet.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, like that he's making about the fact that that's just the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Like getting out and having these resources and places people can go is fantastic. But the Dream Center does a lot of good with helping people get birth certificates, social security numbers. Some of them don't have names. If they were born in the time where they were waiting for Warren to be released from prison, to be able to name their children. There's so many different things that the Dream Center is helping people overcome so that they can be able to just start a new life and start fresh.
Right. It's always interesting for me going back to these places and the picture behind us throughout this video with the home there, and thinking back on my childhood and the experiences I had as a young boy. Just so much time I spent even in that very property with my older brothers, helping with the wall around the complex, helping with the landscaping inside of the complex. I think this is going to sound funny, but I think one of the first times I tasted coffee was actually on Warren Jeffs' property. I say that's funny because throughout Mormonism, in the Word of Wisdom, which is a guide that they have on what is healthy and not healthy for your body, and coffee is one of those things that is recommended that you do not drink. And yet one of his wives brought coffee out to us working on the property. So I kind of look back at that and chuckle, and now not even surprised now after hearing so many stories and seeing so many people come out and say some of the things that were being done within the Jeffs and other leaders of the church families that we weren't allowed to do. And yet they were doing things that they were telling us not to do. And I mean, for example, you can see pictures of Warren. He claims that he was in hiding, but he was wearing what he would call Gentile clothing. He was wearing shorts and T-shirts and things like that, that if we had worn something like that, we would have immediately been kicked out of the community. Mm-hmm. That just was not allowed. And yet he was doing these things, and he was going to these theme parks and things and claiming to be in hiding. But who goes to Disneyland to hide from authorities? That doesn't add up in my mind. So it's very interesting, but I just thought I would point out that the first time I had coffee actually was at the prophet's, who I thought was the prophet's house. So
that
very
is
interesting.
Funny. If you want to hear more of what it was like for Sam to grow up in polygamy, or stay tuned for next week when we do another video on the Torah Short Creek with Mike King from Profiling Evil, then please like and subscribe. And thank you all so much for being here.
Yes, thank you all so much. We look forward to talking with you soon.
Talk to y'all soon.